Well, good afternoon, everybody, and thanks for joining us here at Elevate21. I am pleased to be with one of our great clients, Pieter Lesterhuis from Kruger Family Industries. Pieter joins us today as a very seasoned executive with experience both from a strategic, operational, and a financial perspective. He has a number of years of experience helping to drive true digital transformation across the organizations that he's worked with. And he's going to share with us the story of Kruger Family Industries and their implementation of MuleSoft and how that was instrumental in their digital transformation. So with that, Pieter, welcome. And I'd like to ask you just to get started here, as CFO of Kruger, tell us a little bit about Kruger Family Industries.
Yeah, certainly. Yeah, thanks for having me there, Tom. So KFI is a family-owned conglomerate of returnable packaging, OEM components, as well as automotive accessories. And so our products include various cargo management systems such as the Ram Box, which is a cargo management solution that sits in the side of a pickup truck, on the bed of the pickup truck, and various other integrated cargo management solutions. We're also the leader in lithium car battery transport. So think of large suitcases that hold lithium batteries that go from where the plant makes the battery to where it gets put in the vehicle. We also cover a wide variety of nestable plastic pallets. So think about, wood pallets, but instead they are plastic and they're nestable, so they easily stack on top of each other. Heavily used in the grocery, automotive, and various other industries. And so, kind of on a very large scale, we're the ones that create the automotive packaging for large, engine components and the like, that could be manufactured thousands of miles from where it's actually used. So some of these are very critical as far as, protecting the parts of the vehicle. And then also we make a number of kayaks for various brands, as well as portable restroom walls, which, call them porta potties, portable restrooms. So that's really kind of our manufacturing, what we manufacture. We have 4 facilities, 2 in the US and 2 in Mexico. We are currently the largest heavy gauge thermoformer, which basically means thick plastic is really what we're focused on, large, thick plastic pieces. And our unique differentiation is really that we go from engineering design to thermoforming to extruding, finishing, and assembly. And so we've got the full value chain. And the reason we do that is because packaging is typically the last thing the OEMs think about. And so that's kind of our focus. KFI is a tier 1 supplier, meaning we deliver directly to Ford, GM, Chrysler, Daimler, and various other grocery companies. So yeah, that's kind of what we do.
No, that's great. And I know that you guys recently, we worked with you to recently complete a MuleSoft implementation as a part of a broader digital transformation initiative. Would you care to just kind of expand on the digital transformation initiative that you've been leading at KFI and how MuleSoft was a part of that?
Yes, certainly. So, the first step of this digital transformation is we had a number of different organizations, enterprises, companies that we rolled up together. We were using multiple ERP systems. And so there's been a deep and broad focus on automizing through their software. And it's really a cross-functional automation from, marketing to sales, human resources, manufacturing, supply chain, and really how do we really get all these systems to talk to each other. Today, we have nearly 20 unique pieces of software, and everything kind of feeds back into our ERP system. We really are focused on driving those efficiencies through the various softwares. and really being at, the front end of that curve. Typically, when you see companies take on a challenge like this, it's, multiple years, maybe you'll never get to the end of it. Our focus was really, how do we get this up and running pretty quickly? How do we get the ERP up and running and get all these pieces integrated into it? And so, the ultimate focus is, how do we really drive better decisions? How do we get access to the real-time data and really protect the data? And so, we thought about on-prem versus cloud, and really came back to this, whole model of anytime, anywhere accessibility, and really felt that, the cloud was the way to go, and that digital transformation, all these pieces really needed to play together on that front. So that's really, what we've been focused on. So yeah.
So that's great background. As you think though, specific to MuleSoft, what drove the decision to choose and ultimately invest in MuleSoft as a platform?
Yeah, so it's, that's an interesting question. Ultimately, because of our size, we're really focused on automizing the order flow. And so the order flow for us, especially within the OEM space, is EDI, so electronic data interchange. And so you get a lot of these orders in automatically, no human being touches them. And, so we had an existing system that kind of did that in our old ERP systems, but we couldn't really transfer those over one-to-one, or no one could really read them, because a lot of them are machine generated and so cannot be efficiently read by a human being. There's a lot of code. And the other piece is there was really no standardization between the various OEMs. And so what we really needed is a scalable platform to ensure that, the interaction between all the systems, let's call it the friendly handshake, worked. And so, as order of magnitude, on a monthly basis, we take in 3,000 to 5,000 sales orders, and they could be for hundreds of parts at a time. We receive these electronically, both from the OEM plants as well as the dealer networks. Once we get in the orders, we manufacture them, and we sent nearly 2,000 to 2,500 confirmations out back to the OEMs and to the dealer network. And then subsequently to that, we send out over 1,000 invoices every month. And so all this is done today without a human being really touching it. So it's all, kind of electronically, automatically. And if for some reason a day is missed, you would have to go into the various portals and key in this amount of information. And so we would have to basically stop what we're doing and just key that in to keep up with it. And so, we looked at a couple different softwares. We were, initially, we worked with a premier provider for the ERP system that was, let's call it, considered the gold standard for EDI. However, we could not get it up and running. They had little automotive experience. Yes, they did, 100 times the amount of transactions than we did. They're widely known, but they could just not get it up and running. And so halfway through our ERP implementation, about 4 months into it, we had to pivot away from it. Their answer was really, you need to talk to the OEMs and tell them that this is not the standard. What they do is not right. There's another way to do it. And as you can imagine, going to Ford, GM, Chrysler, Stellantis, FCA, they just don't react well to that. So it was really not an option. So we pivoted away towards MuleSoft halfway through our ERP implementation. And so, I think for us, really the key piece was that once we looked at Mule, and once we saw the power of the partnership with Mule, it was just easier to look at that and go through words of compliance that is required from the OEM's perspective. So, some of the systems are somewhat outdated. You can imagine they're big ships. They're set in their ways. The course that they drive is what you have to comply to. And so, as they change and as they are thinking about updating it, we as a supplier have to be able to adjust to their requirements. And so we looked at Mule as this is something that really allowed us to become a trusted partner to them. As their business evolves, we could evolve with them. And really, at the end of the day, the whole MuleSoft, it's able to cover many different platforms. We don't only use it for EDI, we use it for demand planning. We're implementing it through a forecasting software. And so as you think about all this information coming into the business, something has to ingest it into the system. And MuleSoft really has that power to do that. So, I guess, the power of Mule, I mean, we've seen it firsthand, and I've seen how not to do it. And so that's kind of where we are. I mean, kind of learned the hard way.
Yeah, I mean, anytime you have a false start on a project like you guys had with what was the gold standard, it makes it that much more important to get it right the second time. And when you think about that, I mean, we all know projects like this can be incredibly challenging. What advice would you share with other executives, especially CFOs, considering making an investment in a transformation of this nature?
I mean, the first thing I would say, it's complicated. The couple of great sound bites that I've heard is, look, you look at a new software and people say it talks seamlessly to your ERP, right? And so we put Oracle NetSuite in place, and it's a big, well-known ERP system, and so you have a lot of vendors that are, XYZ, gold, silver, name the color partner. They're the gold standard. They do more transactions than anyone else. And, our software is plug and play, which all sounds great, but typically there needs to be a medium in there somewhere. And that's really, kind of where Mule came in. So there's a long list of things that we learned. The whole plug and play sounds great, typically doesn't work that way. I'm sure Spalding Ridge can give many examples of that. And so, our focus, or my focus, having done this a couple of times now, is really to have a partnership in place with someone who can help you implement this. You have to be prepared to take something like this on. It really comes down to having everything documented. And documented well. We probably spent a year documenting all the EDI in place. We went partner by partner from a EDI perspective, and then really what can you do to leverage one partner over the next. There's some similarities between the partners, and so what are those bite-sized pieces that you can get up and running? And really at the end of the day, you also have to test the system somehow before you go live. But it does require some leap of faith at times to say things will work. And that's, having kind of gone through this and understanding that your partner, whether it's, internally or externally, is there with you to help you through it is really what it comes down to. And, as you're going through this, I mean, I think it's critically important to understand that, what you're doing today, there may be some changes in the processes and the procedures going forward. So you have to be able to adjust. Best in class may be what you do today, but there could be a better best in class, right? And so, I think that's key. And at the end of the day, it's really, having somebody internally from a project management perspective is critical. What's the escalation process? I think often as CFOs, as senior management, we just think, it's just got to work. It's just software. Just get it up and running. But this is somebody's full-time job, and so having somebody internally that manages the project within the organization that is senior enough to get people's attention, as well as somebody from a third party managing the process is critically important.
Yeah, and I was going to ask, sort of related to that. I mean, when you talk about the partnership, and I know we've had a great partnership, but if you're giving advice to somebody else, I mean, how important is it to get the right partner, as you go through a transformation project like this?
I mean, I think it's probably the most important thing, due to the sheer fact that all the software, all these various pieces, they're all looking out for their own skin. And if something goes sideways, everybody's very quickly to kind of start pointing fingers. And so it's important to have, kind of a dedicated project management support, and somebody that has the bandwidth. I mean, this is something that they have to have done before. As they need more resources, can they bring in more resources? Are they the right resources? And, really comes down to understanding you're really in the trenches together. Our success is your success. And so I think that's really important. From the Mule perspective, getting somebody to understand what that technology looks like. A lot of this was built from the ground up. This is not something, straight out of the box. And so you have to have somebody who, has the capacity, interest, to want to understand and get this up and running. And so we were very fortunate that we had somebody like that from Spalding Rich who did an exceptional job, but they lived and breathed this technology. And so as you're getting up and running, it also helped our internal IT staff to kind of get up to speed, which I think is critically important. And I think it's important to remember, developers are not project managers, right? Developers are very focused on putting in the code, and they're very task oriented as far as, okay, I get this up and running, what's next? And so from that perspective, a project manager kind of I can assure you that if it wasn't for Spalding Ridge, we could not have stood up an ERP system within 8 months with the kind of the volume of EDI that we do and what have you. And even halfway through pivoting to go to a different EDI system and getting Mule online. I mean, that was, looking back, it was pretty incredible that we got it done. But again, we were connected at the hip, and that's really why we were successful.
Yeah, I would just add to that. I think one of the important things I know you shared with me earlier that the previous EDI partner said, well, just go tell your customers to change. Go tell Ford, go tell GM, to change what they want for EDI. And so I like to point out the fact that, look, you really have to understand what's capable and what's possible, right? In terms of coming up with a solution that's going to work for the business, not only today, but going forward. And so my next question for you is really now that you have been live on MuleSoft. How would you describe the impact, to Kruger's, operations, on a day-to-day basis, on a daily basis? What have you seen now that you've been live for, almost a year now, I believe?
Yeah. I mean, I would say, we certainly don't miss our legacy system. I think, the first couple of months, it's really challenging because it's new processes and, people are getting comfortable in their new roles. And it takes time to get comfort with this automated process, especially with the OEMs. I mean, you're going directly into their facilities, and if you're not on time, or if you miss something, or the code is off somewhere, you could shut down their plant, and that typically doesn't go over so well. So our focus has really been on getting our salespeople to review the data versus the data entry that they were doing previously. It used to be largely manual. There was a lot of automation we had before, but there was still a large manual part. And Mule, at the end of the day, quickly allowed us to automate these processes. And so, we get 30-day sales orders that gets updated every day, so rolling sales. It automatically gets integrated into our ERP system. And then, NetSuite basically tells us, what we have to build, because we take it to the next step and do the demand planning based on that. And if that changes every day, as we've seen in the OEM space and the automotive space, they can quickly ramp down, but they can also quickly ramp up. And so it'd be really challenging to keep up with that in this day and age. And so I think, it really, at the end of the day, this really allows our sales folks to focus on sales and interpreting the data versus just data entry, which I think is key. With the thousands of invoices that we are sending out on the monthly basis, and it being done automatically. Typically with the OEMs, if it's even a tenth of a penny off, if there's some rounding error, it won't be approved because their computer system doesn't recognize it. And you may not know until 45 days later when all of a sudden, expecting something to show up and it doesn't show up. And so the impact on KFI has been, it's been tremendous.
Yeah, you mentioned this, and I think it's a great point for people listening in to understand. I mean, the consequences of EDI not working for you guys, especially when it comes to shipments going out, and if you were to shut down a line, I mean, there's real financial penalties, right? I mean, they come back and they charge you real dollars. It's not just a question of not recognizing the revenue, not paying you. Like, there's actually penalties that you guys can incur. So the stakes for an implementation like this are as high as they can possibly be in terms of the downside of it not working. So just want everyone to appreciate that. So, as we take a look, I mean, obviously, I mentioned these projects are challenging, and one of the things I always like to ask is, is there anything, looking back in hindsight that you would do differently, knowing what you know today?
I mean, I go back to the trust but verify, right? I mean, the amount of political capital, the amount of frustration, the amount of time, effort, and money that we spent on, the gold standard was frustrating. Right. And so we burned through a lot of resources, and it's tough because as any ERP you're implementing, you're looking for small wins and you're not looking for a huge loss. And so, part of that is also, us, as a CFO, we like to live in a perfect world where it's, there's not a lot of gray matter. And so we had to take somewhat of a leap of faith at cutover. Not that I would advise anybody to do this, but it was not 100% functional nor tested, and so, yes, there was risk we took on, but we took full advantage of the COVID timeframe to say, okay, we got to make these deadlines. We're going to do this. Some of the OEMs were shut down for a couple of weeks, but at the same time, there's test files. And so we spent an extra couple of weeks testing. I think 10 days testing in a live environment, which is typically not advisable. Typically you're very prepared to cut over. And we had a go, no go, and, everybody had concerns, but at the end of the day, there's 1,000 reasons to say no, but one good reason to say yes, right? And so what I often have seen in these ERP implementations is that it takes a long time to get to 100%. But if you're at 95% and the last 5% has to happen because you're going live or you're already in a live environment, that 5% happens really quickly. And so, things like that is very important. I think at the end of the day, you got to figure out what are the bite-sized pieces, and you can't boil the ocean. And so, if you go at it from that perspective, the only thing that I would have done differently is perhaps look at the EDI piece a little closer and really 100% sure that, ask some client references to see, how many transactions are you doing and things like that. And this is in the automotive space, and some of that is standard diligence that's required. But for some, some of this is really a foreign language, right? And so I think, kind of getting up to speed from that perspective is really important.
Yeah, and I think you make a great point, because you really can't completely test EDI until you're in production, right? I mean, you can do a lot of testing in sandboxes, but until you actually plug that in, with your trading partners live and see the files coming in, it's all a theoretical test until you're there. So, I think you guys had a great opportunity with COVID to test that in production for a couple of weeks without necessarily a normal volume. So, kudos to you guys for that. So looking forward, Peter, I mean, as you think about, what MuleSoft has brought to the table for you guys, I mean, how do you think it will help enable the success for Kruger going forward?
I think it's critical to our success. I think MuleSoft really provides this handshake between all these different variable systems. We're using it today for EDI as well as Salesforce. We're looking to MuleSoft to help us integrate or implement a forecasting software. And so, I think the key piece is in our end markets, there's no consistency between the big three. There's not, and there likely will never be. we've expanded our business into many other end verticals, whether it be grocery, or other pieces of the business. And so EDI is really the way of the future. And in that part, MuleSoft is critical. Partner onboarding, and so getting other EDI type clients in place, you have to have something like MuleSoft in place. And you kind of need to be in control of your own destiny on that. I know there's firms out there that can do this for you, but you're one of many clients. And so having a dedicated team focused on that is critically important. And at the end of the day, it doesn't require a lot of individuals to support this, because once it works, it works. And there's plenty of firms like the likes of Spalding Ridge that can help you, that have that expertise. And so, if you have some sort of system in place where you can elevate that, and you're covered from that perspective. And so, I would say MuleSoft has been critical to our digital transformation from the perspective of the whole, kind of vendor control and inventory, improving the transaction speed, improving the visibility into what's going on in the system, document accuracy. There's not somebody that's sitting there typing in those invoices. It allows us to reduce lead times, and ultimately, not that I'm solely focused on it, but it ultimately allows you to save money. And so, that whole accessibility of real-time data allows us to focus on driving a more efficient business model globally. And that's really what we're after. And so I think we've seen that work very well in this situation.
Yeah, and I wouldn't overlook the saving money part. I mean, I think the part of your transformation where you got people away from doing data input to doing data analysis, I mean, that is the vision, right? I mean, that's the dream that a lot of people would say, look, I've got a lot of bright, smart, talented people. They're consuming hours a day just getting the data into the system. You've now changed that. You now have those people doing analysis to say, okay, what does this data mean? How do we make better decisions for the business going forward? And I think, with MuleSoft, enabling that not only with your external trading partners, but also, as you referenced, internally with your Salesforce instance, with your planning solution that you're looking at. I mean, you're truly using it as a platform to get the right information, either externally or internally, to the right point in time, as you move forward. So, really appreciate the time this afternoon, Peter. Congratulations on, a very successful transformation, and really appreciate you participating with us here at Elevate 2021.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.